Good evening and welcome to the Woodrow Wilson Center. It is a particular honor for us tonight in the presence of C-SPAN to welcome the Foreign Minister of Mexico. Claudia Ruiz is a returnee to Woodrow Wilson. She was here in June of 2013 as Minister of Tourism. She was also with us in September of that same year when we gathered the women leaders in public service, a presentation which we undertook with Barnard College. So it is a re-welcome to Madam Minister for returning to this institution. We also welcome Doris Meissner, the Director for U.S. Policy at the Migration Policy Institute, otherwise known as MPI. Doris is the host of tonight's event, and she will carry out the interview with the Foreign Minister. It is with great pleasure that Woodrow Wilson welcomes both of you to our stage.
Well, thank you, Diana, and thank you to the Wilson Center for hosting us and for our continuing friendship and cooperation as institutions. I'm pleased also to welcome everyone in this audience today, as well as those that are on live stream and are watching on TV or listening on the radio. This event is the Migration Policy Institute's Leadership Visions series. Leadership Visions is an MPI speakers program that gives senior officials who are responsible for immigration policy-related portfolios an opportunity to lay out their vision for their work as they are newly embarking upon new responsibilities. Our guest today, Secretary Claudia Ruiz-Massieu, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mexico, is a perfect example of that kind of a person. She was appointed to be Foreign Minister on August 27th of 2015, having already served in President Peña Nieto's cabinet since 2012. She has served in a range of other executive posts in her government and in various leadership positions as an elected official in Mexico's House of Representatives. She's a lawyer by training and has been an academic and a frequent political analyst in the Mexican media. I had the pleasure of meeting her very recently and was very impressed with the scope of her knowledge and ideas for this critical and complex position that she is now in. So I'm particularly pleased to host her during her first visit to Washington, D.C. as Mexico's new foreign minister. Now, the way we'll do this is as follows. The Secretary will come to the podium to make remarks. Then she'll rejoin me at the table and we'll have a conversation between us for a little while. And then finally, we'll open to the audience for audience Q&A. So please join me in a warm welcome for Secretary Claudia Ruiz-Massieu.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Doris, for your introduction and most of all for your invitation. And thank you all for being here. It is an honor to be here today on my first visit to Washington as Mexico's Secretary of Foreign Affairs. We chose to come to MPI and establish my first constructive dialogue with Washington's different public audiences because migration is one of our top public policy priorities. We live in an era of unprecedented migration. About 232 million people migrate globally. This means that 1 in 7 people are migrants. Migration flows have increased, and the actual context under which this phenomenon is occurring poses significant new challenges. We are addressing the ebbs and flows of unaccompanied minors from Central America, increased push factors from regional violence from Eritrea to Burundi, Syrian refugees wanting to flee a civil war with the global implications that has left devastation in its wake, surging numbers of Cuban citizens traveling over 500 kilometers to reach the United States, etc. The paradox is that while migration flows are being triggered by basically the same push and pull factors, armed conflicts, better opportunities, social strife, political turmoil, the global map is shrinking. One single geographical space houses all sorts of migrants, refugees, or asylees, and host states are struggling to just understand the diversity and complexity that comes with each flow of newcomers. Old religions and tongues are conquering unexplored territories. You would be immediately thinking on Europe, but the Americas have been experiencing this reality for decades now. These conditions have unfortunately been met in some places by an irresponsible and dangerous narrative of xenophobia and exclusion that wrongly portrays immigrants as security concerns. It is our obligation to stand up to this trend and think of proactive policy solutions rather than instilling fear and hatred and resorting to vacuous statements. These narratives are simply unsustainable. And these narratives sell among some audiences due to misinformation about the impact of migration. It is easier to focus on the costs rather than in the countless contributions immigrants make every day to their countries of destination. The case of the contributions Mexican immigrants make to the United States is just a case in point. Just to give you some daily facts of life, 12% of immigrant small business owners in the U.S. are Mexican. More than 1 in 25 businesses in the U.S. are owned by a Mexican immigrant. These businesses generate over $17 billion in revenue each year. Immigrants are also entrepreneurs. Today, 1 out of 10 Mexicans in the United States have their own businesses. The 33 million Mexicans living in the United States, including second and third generation, represent 8% of the country's GDP. Now imagine this figure, $11.8 billion. This is the amount of dollars that undocumented immigrants paid to state and local governments in the form of taxes in 2012. And the list goes on. Once we have opened our eyes to this reality, it compels us to craft 2.0 or perhaps 5.0 policies. We need to embrace migration as an opportunity. We have to change our mindset and adapt to current needs that are anything but static. Today, it is even more critical to unmask the stereotypes of international migrants and design solutions tailored to each context, prioritizing the well-being of each person who migrates and making sure their fundamental rights are fully respected. Mexico is embracing this redrawn landscape. As a country of origin, destination, return, and transit of migrants, we have been forced to come up with a wide, deep, and innovative toolbox of migration policies. We have to put our strengths to a smarter use. I would like to outline 3 of the main principles that underline this innovative toolbox that we are resorting to. These are cooperation, coherence, and innovation. Cooperation. Mexico is engaged in a multi-layered / multivectorial approach to cooperation. First, today more than ever, regional is pivotal to both the local and global impacts of migration. The new realities have forced us to focus on new grounds: integration, return, and social and productive reinsertion of migrants. Mexico has been a regional leader in addressing migration challenges, most recently through the Regional Conference on Migration, which we currently chair. The conference is a multilateral consultative forum designed to examine issues related to global migration from a regional and comprehensive perspective. The conference has delivered significant results, such as generating a new and comprehensive dialogue with 10 partners of the region, plus Mexico, and including the United States, on the key subjects of return and reinsertion. Second, we are seizing horizontal cooperation focused on sharing best practices and learning from one another on how to best address this issue. For example, last May, the Global Consular Forum brought together international experts to share their experiences on how to engage with their diaspora and how to offer better services to our people using new technological and innovation tools, particularly in areas such as emergency management and services, migrant workers, and creating a safer travel culture. And third, institutional cooperation. This is becoming a valuable asset, and Mexico and the U.S. know it. Such an example is the creation in 2014 of the Binational Repatriation Strategy and Policy Executive Coordination Team, also known as RESPECT, with the goal of analyzing needs and designing fresh public policies to guarantee secure and orderly deportation of Mexican immigrants. In that same spirit of cooperation, we also created the Border Violence Prevention Technical Working Group to put a renovated emphasis on preemptive protection and transcultural awareness in order to reduce violent incidents at the border. There has been a 26% reduction in use of force incidents in the border region from 2014 to 2015. Among some of the highlights of this group's actions are the new guidelines issued by CBP on the use of force by Border Patrol agents. The second principle that is underpinning our migration policies is coherence. At its heart, coherence impels us to treat immigrants in our country the same way we expect others to treat our nationals abroad. In Mexico, this can be best exemplified by our Southern Border Program, launched by President Peña Nieto during the summer of last year. The program seeks to achieve secure and orderly flows of migrants, while at the same time recognizing the intrinsic nature of community life at the border. With this program, Mexico has not only expanded opportunities for migrants to enter our country legally and increase their safety, but has also worked on initiatives that improve the treatment that immigration officials give migrants at the border and inside our territory. As expected, when we decided to implement this program, we have seen a very significant increase in the number of detained migrants at our southern border, close to 200,000 for this year, almost 3 times the numbers from 2 years ago. But we need to read this number in a wider context. We have also renovated infrastructure at 12 points of entry between Mexico and Guatemala and Belize. We have detained more than 500 people and 50 vehicles associated to crimes like human trafficking and smuggling. And we have issued over 800,000 visas for regional workers and visitors, increasing Central Americans' opportunities for legal migration and work in Mexico. Mexico will not stop repeating its mantra. Governments should work not to close borders and limit migration, but make significant efforts to increase safe and secure migration flows. Balance between the need for greater mobility and security concerns and interests is an attainable goal. Mexico has worked with the United States to develop smart borders, which facilitate flows of goods and people while ensuring the respect of human rights of migrants. This has also been the case with those people who seek refuge because conflict in their countries has completely shattered their livelihoods. Mexico has historically opened its doors to refugees, and for some, it seems that we have shut down our doors, and it is not the case. The international community might be focused on Syrians, but I would like to remind you that hundreds of Central Americans and others enter Mexico's southern border every single day. Today, the administration of President Peña Nieto has committed to keep those doors open in the current context. In the case of Syrians, if they happen to apply for refugee or asylum, Mexico will stand ready to welcome them, but it seems that they are choosing other destinations. Our third principle is innovation, and we are embracing innovation in 4 fronts: on how we deliver to Mexicans living overseas and how we build stronger ties with them, improving our policies to better protect vulnerable migrant populations, regarding policies that will aid returnees in the process of reintegration into society and help them become active economic agents in their communities and at home. In the past few years, Mexico has improved the myriad services we offer our nationals at our consulates. We have modernized consular services, operations, and documents for Mexican citizens in the United States. We set new service standards for all our operations, which have enabled us to reduce service wait times by 80%. We also added technological improvements to our main documents, the passport and consular ID card, or matrícula consular, making them safer and tamper-proof, with the ultimate goal of facilitating their acceptance by local authorities. We have also modernized our consular diplomacy efforts to improve the opportunities of our nationals. Our consuls work tirelessly to promote the significant contribution immigrants make to the economy and society of this great nation. Craft recommendations that are being enacted in policies and legislation that will allow them to integrate better into the communities they live in. If we zoom out, we can observe that governments around the world are increasingly adopting integration policies. 91% of countries in developed regions did so in 2011. We have also innovated on how we approach and build ties with Mexicans abroad. Our main goal is to empower our people by designing programs aimed at their integration in areas such as health, education, and financial access. For example, the Ventanilla de Salud, a health stop that provides health information, counseling, and referrals for Mexican and their families in the United States. And we truly want to innovate when thinking on developing tools to protect vulnerable populations, and we are indeed making headway. In May, for example, Mexico announced a protocol for unaccompanied minors in collaboration with UNICEF. This protocol is now in operation in all our consulates. It seeks to improve assistance and interview mechanisms when dealing with unaccompanied minors to be able to make an accurate assessment of the risks they might face and determine the best possible outcome for their well-being on a case-by-case approach. Regarding women, for example, Mexico has developed better policies to serve migrant women abroad. A couple of weeks ago, I signed a protocol created jointly with UN Women to improve consular attention mechanisms in order to be able to identify any gender-based violence and contribute to the comprehensive well-being and development of women. Equality and non-discrimination sit at the core of all of our actions. And finally, we are innovating at home. We're taking a fresh look at the services we offer to our nationals who return to Mexico. We know the challenges they face when they go back to a home they might feel distant. This is why the Mexican government has decided to help them overcome those challenges and to improve their return to our country, their home country, and is in the process of implementing policies that will help them thrive in all areas. Ladies and gentlemen, cooperation, coherence, and innovation. These are the guiding principles that are helping us face the increasingly challenging migration phenomenon and its multiple dimensions. We are committed to serving our population outside our borders, to make them prosper, to improve their well-being, and to have their positive impact acknowledged. We're fully committed to working together with local authorities, the states, and other countries to think, explore, share, design, and develop the best possible solutions to common challenges. Migration could also be seen as an interdomestic issue, and thus there is margin for working hand in hand while paying careful attention to the sensitive phases of this phenomenon. It is only together that we can achieve great things. We're also fully invested in treating all migrants, Mexicans, and any others in the same humane way. And finally, we're betting on the future through innovation, working closely to bring down, rather than to build, the wall of racism and fear, exclusion, and extremism that has become so dangerously fertile and appealing in many contexts. But what we truly hunger for, and thus is a pressing need of this in this area, is courageous leadership to face the challenges and accomplish these goals. It is our responsibility to change the narrative of immigration by acknowledging immigrant contributions, working closely across borders, and most importantly, by spreading a message of tolerance. I thank you all for being here today and look forward to our dialogue.
Well, thank you so much. You've put lots of topics on the table. So let's, and people in the audience should be thinking of the questions that they want to ask. But I'd like to start with picking up a little further on so much of what you talked about, the U.S. Mexico relationship vis-a-vis immigration and migration, because obviously that ties us together not only geographically, but at so many levels in both of our societies. And one of the things that is so important is the way in which that relationship is in fact changing. As you know, there's been a profound shift in the numbers of people from Mexico that come to the United States in an unauthorized status. The flow now is predominantly a north to south flow rather than south to north. There are more people returning to Mexico than are coming to the U.S. This is something that is not well understood in the United States at all, and it is not reflected in our political conversation. Is it understood in Mexico? Do Mexicans understand? What is the debate in Mexico about the way in which this shift is taking place, which is a historic shift after about 40 years of the El Norte tradition?
I think this is, in fact, one of the greatest challenges we have. How to keep on providing protection, accompaniment, and avenues for integration to the population, the Mexican population that lives in the United States, and continue to have that as a cornerstone of our policy and foreign policy towards the United States, while making it visible that we have increasing numbers of migrants returning home. We have different programs and different windows within the federal government to welcome those migrants that are returning back, but we have not had up until now a focal point, and that is what we want to change from the Foreign Affairs Ministry itself. We want to make our delegations in Mexico, inside of Mexico, we have 44 representations throughout the country. We want to make them the first point of contact for our people that are coming back. And ideally, we want to have our 50 consulates in the United States mirror those delegations that we have in order to know who's coming back, what are his or her challenges, how can we better help them assimilate and back into their communities, how can we help them and save them the time of going knocking on the different many doors that the federal government has for treating specific challenges that they have. We want to help them integrate into our financial system. We want to help them know what their potential social benefits are, or what job opportunities they might have. And we want to help them by becoming the first door they knock, and then we can sort of help them navigate through the complicated process of assimilating back into their communities, or the communities they want to establish on. But to answer your question, I don't think this has been, up until very recently, a part of the immigration conversation in Mexico. We know the numbers that the trends have reversed, that we're receiving more Mexican immigrants than we are sending, but it's still part of the conversation regarding what we are doing vis-a-vis the United States, and not necessarily of how we are constructing, building, designing, implementing public policies geared to better receive them and to better help them become a productive force of our economy and of our social change. But this is starting to change. We are in this endeavor by instructions of the President himself, and we're working on that with Foreign Affairs Ministry as a focal point, but of course working cross-government, because every one of us has a point of contact and a point of aid or of help that can better integrate returning migrants.
You know, this multiple roles now that you talked about of being an origin country, a destination country, a transit country, a return country. Do you see a need, or is there likely to be a need for any changes in your own laws, given those changes that are really historically profound?
Well, we have a fairly recent immigration law that needs to be revised, and that is currently being revised unofficially by the legislative branch and, of course, by us and the Ministry of the Interior, by the Secretaría de Gobernación. But we, in fact, have changed our policies. We have changed our policies internally, and we have changed our policies in the way we relate not only to the United States, but to our neighbors in the South. We have increasingly underscored the importance of and the contributions migrant populations make to their countries of destination, but also to the countries they transit in. And we have made a cornerstone of our international and foreign policy with Central America the understanding that immigration requires a collective effort to work not only to ensure safer and more orderly flows, but to work together on and focus on the causes of immigration. We have been working together with our countries to the south and also with the United States through triangular cooperation in building actual infrastructure to ensure safer and more orderly everyday crossings, but also on investing together on creating better job opportunities, more social infrastructure, better institutions to help the countries to our south become more capable to ensure prosperity and opportunities for their people. So we know immigration is not going to stop. We know immigration has and should have a rich and very positive impact on the countries it has destination as or transit to, or like Mexico, where we have all the phenomena together. And that when we talk about immigration, we should also be talking about human rights, human dignity, and that entails investing on institutions, investing on human capital, investing on changing paradigms and on changing stereotypes as well.
You know, on the subject of Central America and the countries to the south, you talked about the fact that you're doing considerably more on enforcement. We know that there has been much more enforcement now taking place along the southern border of Mexico. And there's naturally, you're aware, a real criticism of that in the United States that says that the United States is now outsourcing its enforcement to Mexico, and that Mexico has been pressured into doing a considerably more, greater degree of enforcement. Talk about that. Talk about that criticism and about your own interests as a nation in the way that you touched on a little bit in your remarks about border enforcement.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that perception is completely false. We have been working in our southern border because it is in our interest to do so, and it is in the interest of our neighbors that we work together on not only ensuring the region becomes more secure, but more prosperous. And we know that we cannot have a secure region, whether it is, we're talking about the southern border of Mexico or the southern border of the United States, or indeed the whole region. We cannot have a secure region if we do not have a prosperous region. And building together the legal framework, the infrastructure, the human resources to ensure that is in everyone's best interest. And that has been our approach, and it has been, I think, a very successful approach. We have a very everyday productive cooperation with our neighbors in Central America regarding the sharing information, regarding sharing best practices, building protocols together, but also regarding building actual infrastructure. If we have the resources to build it, we build it. If we have to go in together to build roads, we do it. If we want to have a much more prepared human capital in the region, we instrument exchange, academic mobility, cooperation mechanisms. And we talk about this not only with the United States, not only with our partners in and Central America, but indeed with all our countries and partners in South America. We're increasingly coming to understand that we share a vision of prosperity and of security and safety. And that can only be achieved if we find common ground and if we build from our commonalities and consensus and common vision, rather than if we emphasize our differences and the things that we do not like about each other. Let's focus on what we like about each other and what we share and build from that.
Let me take you to a variant of that, which is your consular network in the United States, because Mexico has made a significant continuing investment in building your consular services throughout the United States, really for decades now. And one of the main things that you do that you talked about was the matricula, which, as you know, has come under some attack, particularly right now in a lawsuit in Texas and unwillingness to use it for issuing birth certificates. Tell us what you tell us about the matricula. Tell us about the consular network and why the matricula is important. And what would you say to those officials in Texas that are questioning it?
Well, first of all, I would say that our foremost responsibility as Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the United States or elsewhere, and through our consular offices, is protecting our people. And protecting means making them aware of their rights, helping them and aiding them legally when they have a legal challenge, and ensuring that they can become part of the communities they have chosen to live at. And the matricular ID is a document that has the highest standards regarding security, regarding all the safety procedures to ensure that it's not tampered with, and that provides our people with justly an identification card to say this is who they are and to enable them to become a much more visible, productive part of the communities where they live. Increasingly, many states are accepting the consular ID to let our people that have them obtain a driver's license, obtain education, obtain certain health services, and that it has proven to be an identification instrument that is really helpful, that helps them become safer, and to also ensure safety for all the people that live in the community with them. There are some states that do not accept that, and we denounce that in the ways that the legal system in the United States allows us to do so. We hope that more and more states will see the benefits of accepting the consular ID. We will continue issuing the consular ID, and we will continue to do so not only with the highest levels of safety and security, but also within the Vienna Convention regarding consular relationships mandate. So I think it is useful, and I think increasingly more banks, more institutions, more universities, more states, and more employers are coming to see that it is useful also for them.
Okay, let's go to the audience. We have microphones, I believe, and so in order for you to be heard by others, we need to wait until you get a microphone. Let's go right here. And tell us who you are, and then your question.
Howard Wooldridge. When Americans from time to time cross over the border to Mexico, I read at least they're arrested and detained for a period of time by the Mexican police. My question involves education on the part of the Mexican government towards your own citizens. When your citizens are contemplating going across the border, does the government of Mexico ever advise their citizens that there's a legal process and that they should go to a port of entry and cross legally? Do you suggest this is the best way to go, or do you stay silent on that particular concept?
No, part of what we do is making it known to Mexicans in general about the specific procedures and requirements to enter any country. We do that through our offices, our webpage, our consulates, our embassies all over the world. And for the U.S., we also make the effort to, let's say, educate the public that there are procedures, that there are rules, that there are requirements, and that there are legal points of entry if you meet that criteria. However, recognizing that we have immigration of undocumented people, we also make the effort with other ministries and agencies in the federal government to tell people that it is dangerous, that they may face certain challenges, and we also make it known that we have consular offices that are there to provide them with guidance and with assistance. Like any other country, we discourage illegal migration, but we do not, and that I think is a very important principle of our immigration law and of our policies. We do not criminalize undocumented migration. We try to educate, we try to help, we try to assist, and we try to help people assimilate in their communities and face the requirements they need to meet. But I don't think any country in the world really encourages undocumented migration. We certainly don't, but we do not criminalize undocumented migration.
Okay, up here in the front, Diana.
Diana Negroponte from the Woodrow Wilson Institute. Madam Minister, I wish to stretch you from migration to the issue of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Last week, the leader of the Senate, the U.S. Senate, advised President Obama not to present the treaty which you signed in November at Atlanta until after our elections. What impact does that have on Mexico, on Mexico's trade policy, and with your conversations with the Peruvian and Chilean ministers of foreign affairs with who also must face the consequences of this advice?
Well, Mexico for some decades now has made free trade agreements a cornerstone of our foreign policy, but also of our vision for constructing prosperity, long-lasting prosperity. So for us, the Trans-Pacific Partnership is an agreement that complements the wide range of agreements we have with over 45 markets in all over the world. We are committed to the TPP. We signed the TPP in Atlanta, and before doing so, when I say we, I really say my colleague in the Ministry of Economy, but we held consultations, over 1,000 consultations, with specific industries, with specific economic groups that are stakeholders, in fact, of the industries that are going to be potential, because we see it as a good thing, potentialized with the TPP. We are very much committed in hoping and helping Congress, the Senate, ratify the TPP in the next session at the beginning of the next year. And like I said, we think it's important. It will gain us access to other markets as a country, but I think it would also open us as a region, as a North American region, because the United States and Canada are also part of the TPP. It will open us as a region to wider markets, and it will help us if we continue in the path we have been for the past 20 years since NAFTA, to integrate better and to make the most of our comparative advantages, to transform them into competitive advantages vis-a-vis the region of the world that looks it's going to be growing the most in the next coming years. But we're also part of the Pacific Alliance, and we are also working with our Pacific Alliance to make the most of our strengths and their strengths. So to answer your question, I think we are very committed to the TPP. It's going to complement what we already have in terms of the framework for free trade. We hope every other country that committed to can pass it through their respective congresses, because I think it is a good thing. It is what NAFTA used to be. Many people didn't think it was going to work out, and I think it has largely become a success story. And like many people said in Mexico at the time, will it be good? Will it be bad? I don't know, but if we had passed up the opportunity, I don't think we would be where we are now, the 15th largest economy in the world, increasingly prosperous, increasingly inclusive, with many challenges, to be sure, but with the right tools to face those challenges.
Let me see some hands in the back. How about right here on the aisle? Oh, okay.
Hi, Francisco Alvarez with the Roosevelt Institute. I have two questions about how Mexico's foreign ministry supports children of Mexican nationals born abroad. The first question is about La Reforma de 98. So as of December 1998, my understanding is that there was a reform to the Constitution that ensured citizenship for children of Mexican nationals born abroad. But back in September of 2015, there was a move by the Mexican Senate to somehow express that explicitly. So I'm not sure, what I'm not understanding is that legislative move, was that a change in policy? Was that a better articulation of existing policy? What exactly does that state about the policy or La Reforma of 1998, which I thought was what was in action? The second question is about an amicus curiae brief that the Mexican government filed in support of undocumented families in Texas whose children were being denied citizenship. Could you articulate a little bit more about what is the goal of that brief and how it is meant to support children of undocumented, of Mexican nationals born abroad? Thank you.
Yes. Well, one of the responsibilities we have is helping Mexicans abroad become more empowered. And one way to become more empowered is to have full access to every right you have. And for some people, for millions of Mexicans and Mexican Americans or children born here that were born to Mexican parents, that entails being eligible for citizenship. So we have consciously made a policy decision to help those people become aware of the possibility of becoming an American citizen, and to help them obtain the legal aid to pursue that process. Because we have come to understand and we believe that if you have, and that is why there was a constitutional reform a couple of years ago to allow Mexicans to hold a double nationality. Before that, it was not possible. But today it is. And I think what that means is that you can be Mexican and an American, or a Mexican and a Spaniard, or a Mexican and a British citizen, and that does not make you less Mexican. That does not end our responsibility to you as a Mexican citizen, and that in turn might provide millions of people with the possibility to access more benefits and more rights. So our commitment as a government is to empower people, and for millions of people that entails opting to follow the process to become an American citizen. And we fully endorse that whoever is in that position pursue that if they want to. And regarding the amicus curiae, like I was saying before, we filed the amicus curiae because we can. We can do so as a means of making our case to the courts that we think these children and this suit filed by Texas and some other states is not correct, and that is our prerogative under American law and our possibility under American law to file this amicus curiae brief, and we did so, and we hope it will be taken into account if the Supreme Court decides to hear that, and will take that into account. But we are a third interest party.
Okay, let's go over to this side of the room. Any hands? All right, then back to the woman on the aisle okay, there.
Thank you. Maureen Meyer from
Hi,
the
Maureen.
Washington Office on Latin America. I wanted to ask a question about the Programa Frontera Sur. You had mentioned, and indeed President Peña Nieto, when he launched the program, talked a lot about it working to protect migrants as they travel, and yet documentation and research that organizations and migrant shelters have done in Mexico would suggest that crimes and abuses against migrants in transit through Mexico continue. Mexico's National Human Rights Commission has registered an uptick of over 30% in complaints against the National Immigration Agency since the program started. So wanted to ask you, can you describe more what the government is doing to focus on that area of protection for migrants as they travel through Mexico? Thank you.
Well, one way to look at it is that since the program started, violations came up by 30%. But the other way to look at it is that since the program started, we built the mechanisms for people to be able to denounce when there are violations. And I fully and very truthfully think that is what has happened. We do face many challenges because we have large flows of people traveling through Mexico, but we have tried to build a safer and more ordered and secure border by modernizing our infrastructure, by having cooperation agreements with our southern neighbors, by training better our officers in the immigration agency, by building shelters that separate minors and women from men, by cooperating more and more with civil society that has been essential for building a much more modern and sustained and trustworthy for the migrants infrastructure throughout the trail that they cross. And the Programa Frontera Sur has all these components. Infrastructure building regarding safer crossing and more orderly crossing, information sharing, capability sharing, and shared building of capabilities, and also a component of real cooperation with civil society, and also building the framework for violations to be denounced and violations and infractions being punished. So I think we have built the legal framework, the actual physical framework, and we're slowly also changing the mindset of the officials that are in charge of immigration, that are there at the border, and of the communities that are passing points for the migrants along the way, to help them and to add their cooperation, their abilities, their resources to the governments, so we can better serve and protect those migrants. We want them, like I said, we want the migrants that pass through Mexico to be as humanely treated, as fairly treated, and with as much dignity as we expect our migrants to be treated elsewhere. So it's a process.
Any other hands? Okay, here in the front.
Hi, Gabriel Toledo from the George Washington University. Last October, in a meeting with Mexican professionals, Ambassador Bazañez mentioned that he wanted to transform the Mexican population here in the U.S. into the largest lobbying organization here in the U.S. Could you mention more about what strategies does the ministry has to accomplish this goal? Thank you.
I'm going to say what I think he meant. And afterwards, you can talk to him. No, what we meant, what we mean as the government is what I was saying before. It is our responsibility to ensure that our people have better tools to become productive members of the communities they're settled in, to ensure that they have access to all the benefits they have right to, and to have a better access to the rights they have, both as migrants and some of them as, many of them as legal residents, and many more as people that that are eligible for citizenship. And in that sense, communicating their rights, the possible benefits they have access to, and helping them get in touch with organizations that provide those tools, that provide that access, is also part of our everyday consular work. We have in our consulates, we have 50 consulates, as you know. In our consulates, we have evolved in the type of engaging we do with the different populations, Mexican or Mexican-American populations we come in contact to. And they all need different things from us. Some of them need more, let's say, protection services than others. Some of them need legal aid that's more basic, and some of them need more sophisticated legal aid. Some of them just want us to be a point of contact for them to help their communities back at home, but they don't want to go back. So we have been evolving to provide the services, the information, and the accompaniment each of these universe of people need. And one of them, they all need, most of them need, is information. And we understand our responsibility as providing information to help them understand what their rights are, what their possible benefits are, and helping them knock on the right doors to get that.
Okay, final question. In the front, Andrew.
Thank you, Doris, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here. Andrew Seeley from the Wilson Center, and honored to have you here today. Two questions on specific groups. The doubly undocumented. There's a number of Mexican citizens living in the U.S. who don't have birth certificates from Mexico. And this particularly becomes noticeable when they apply for, when they're eligible for programs like DACA, where they can adjust their status. And I'm wondering what the Foreign Ministry is doing. My understanding is that consulates are increasingly trying to help them get their birth certificates from their original states. But if you could comment on what the Mexican government can do with that. And the second is, increasingly we're seeing Mexicans and Americans actually moving to Mexico. In fact, we're probably seeing more Americans moving to Mexico than Mexicans to the United States, and we're probably seeing more Mexicans moving to Mexico than vice versa. Quite often taking with them children who are U.S. citizens, right, and who have been educated in the United States and may or may not speak Spanish fluently. And if you have any thoughts on the adjustment issues there, but also, you know, the new set of issues that are emerging on the bilateral agenda that are beyond what we've talked about in the past.
Thank you. Yes. Well, early this year, we enabled our consulates here in the United States to be able to issue birth certificates for people that had already been registered in Mexico. So we now have our consular officers issuing birth certificates, but that's only for the people that were already registered in Mexico. So of course that made us realize there's a whole other universe of people that had not had the opportunity to be registered in Mexico and did not have, in fact, birth certificate. We're working with the Commission of Superior Courts in Mexico, and I'm happy to say that I think by the end of the first trimester in next year, we're going to make it possible for consular officers to issue birth certificates for people born here. We're working on that. We're working on that, obviously, from a legal perspective with the civil registrars in all the states to ensure that we give the consular officers the possibility of doing so. We know that's a huge gap, and we're working as we speak to be able to address that. And regarding children that are U.S. citizens, that's one of the many challenges we're facing with people that return to Mexico. And like I was saying, we're crafting a model where our representations within Mexico, like I said, we have 44 in all of Mexico, which up until now issue passports. That's the main thing we do. But we have realized that we have to become the first point of contact for migrants that are returning. And each migrant that returns with different challenges that we as authorities, as a government, have to help them overcome. Some of them have children that are born in the U.S. that they have do not have the legal papers to demonstrate if they went to primary school or not. So we are working with the Education Ministry to ensure that we build a mechanism where we can receive them easily. But we do not want them to go and have to knock on the representation of the Education Ministry in their state and then go and make another queue and for the Health Ministry to resolve their problem regarding insurance, and then go to the representation of a Labor Department and see what job is available. So we want to be able to help them since they are from the time they're in the United States, and they go to our consulates and tell us, I'm thinking of returning home. And we ask them, okay, where are you going to go? What do you know what to do? What's your problem? Who are you traveling with? And help them resolve that under one roof. We're sort of trying to build a one roof hub for migrants on their way back. We're still working on that, but the president is very keen on that idea because he knows with this reverse flow that is part of our reality now, we have to have more creative, integrated policies that help us welcome them back, help us help them integrate better in their communities or the communities where they want to settle in, and also help everyone make them a very productive force of transformation in Mexico. So from school certificates to birth certificates to job opportunities to health benefits, we are trying to build a comprehensive space where they can come, knock at the door, and have people focus on their specific problems. That is also a shift in our policy, because we've come to realize that as Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that is also our responsibility.
One-stop shopping, I think we would call that. Well, okay, we've touched on a range of very important issues, new issues, challenging issues. We're at the end of our time, but I invite you to come forward if you want to converse further. But thank you so very much. Thank you so very much for being here and for being so granular about the things that in fact are going on and that are characterizing the changes in our relationship. Thank you all for being here, and let's thank the minister.
Thank you again.